The cold metal tray hit the stone floor with a loud clang. The tin of American sea rations rolled across the room. Hard-tack biscuits shattered on impact. Lukewarm black coffee spilled in a dark puddle across the dusty floorboards. Sitting at the wooden table was a captured SS Standartenführer, a high-ranking Nazi colonel. His black uniform was pristine. He crossed his legs, leaned back in his chair, and looked up at the young American guard with a look of unfiltered disgust. "I am a senior officer of the German military," the SS commander declared. "Under the Geneva Convention, I am entitled to officers' rations. I will not eat this swill. I demand a proper hot meal, and I demand to speak to your commanding officer immediately." The 19-year-old American private stared at the arrogant Nazi. The guard didn't yell. He didn't raise his rifle. He simply looked at the spilled food, nodded slowly, and walked away. Inside the cold room, the SS officer smiled. He believed he had successfully intimidated his captors. He thought he was dealing with soft, weak Americans who would soon return with an apology and a steak. But he had no idea who was visiting the command post that morning. He had no idea that General George S. Patton was about to walk through that door. To understand this explosive confrontation, we must look at the timeline. According to accounts passed down by Third Army veterans, this standoff took place in the bitter aftermath of the Battle of the Bulge, early in 1945. It was the coldest European winter in living memory. The GIs of the United States Third Army had been marching and bleeding in sub-zero temperatures. For these men, hell was not fire. Hell was the frozen forests of the Ardennes. These soldiers survived on exactly what was on that metal tray: frozen meat hash, stale biscuits, coffee that tasted like ditch water. They had sacrificed everything to break the back of the Nazi war machine. As the Allies pushed the German army back across the Rhine, they began taking thousands of prisoners. Regular Wehrmacht soldiers were relieved the war was ending. They were starving and exhausted. But the Americans also captured the elite soldiers of the Waffen-SS. And what shocked the GIs most was not their brutality, but their staggering arrogance. These men had been indoctrinated to believe they were the peak of human evolution, the master race. To them, Americans were a mongrel nation, weak, undisciplined, and inferior. Even in defeat, SS commanders refused to accept reality. When captured, they demanded salutes from American corporals. They demanded separate quarters. They demanded the privileges of gentlemen. This delusion pushed the exhausted American soldiers to their breaking point. They had just witnessed the aftermath of the Malmedy massacre, where SS troops had executed unarmed American prisoners in the snow. The illusion of a gentleman's war was dead. This brings us back to that shattered German town. The SS Standartenführer sat alone in the holding room for 45 minutes. He adjusted his collar. He waited patiently for the Americans to correct their mistake. Suddenly, the silence was broken. Distinct, heavy boots marched down the hallway. These were not the tired shuffles of infantrymen. These were sharp, authoritative footsteps. The heavy wooden door didn't just open, it was kicked inward. It slammed against the stone wall with a deafening crack. The SS officer flinched. Standing in the doorway, blocking the light, was a towering figure. He wore a polished steel helmet with 3 silver stars, an immaculate olive-drab uniform, and strapped to his hip, in a custom leather holster, was his legendary ivory-handled Colt .45 revolver. His face was weathered by war. His eyes were locked onto the German with a cold, unwavering intensity. It was General George S. Patton, the commander of the U.S. Third Army, the man the German High Command feared more than any other Allied general. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. The SS officer's smirk vanished. He realized he had made a grave miscalculation. Patton stepped into the room. In his right hand, he held his signature leather riding crop. He tapped it against his leg as he walked. Tap, tap, tap. It was the only sound in the room. Patton walked to the table. He didn't look at the German. He looked at the floor. He looked at the spilled coffee, the shattered biscuits, the dented tin of meat lying in the dirt. Slowly, General Patton raised his head. He locked eyes with the SS commander. "I hear," Patton began, his voice a low gravel that filled the small room, "that you don't like our food." The SS officer swallowed hard. His throat was dry, but his ingrained ego forced him to speak. "General Patton," the German said, trying to maintain his posture, "as an officer of equal standing, I demand the basic rights of a gentleman. My men and I expect proper rations, not this garbage." Patton didn't blink. He didn't shout. He simply stood there, radiating pure, controlled aggression. He leaned in close. The German could smell the cigar smoke on his uniform. "A gentleman?" Patton whispered. The general slammed his hand onto the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Stand up!" Patton barked. The command was so sudden, so powerful, that the SS officer instinctively shot to his feet, snapping to attention. Patton stepped forward, invading the German's personal space. He did not touch him. He didn't need to. His presence alone was crushing. "You listen to me," Patton growled. "My boys, the soldiers who just kicked your army across the Rhine, have been eating frozen meat from tin cans for months. They have bled in the snow. They have frozen in the mud, and they did it to wipe your regime off the map." Patton pointed his riding crop at the Nazi's chest. "A gentleman? Don't you ever use that word in my presence. I know who your unit is. I've read the reports from Malmedy. I've seen the unarmed prisoners your men left in the ditches." Patton's voice dropped to a cold, deadly tone. "You forfeited the title of soldier the day you put on that uniform. You are not a gentleman. You are a defeated prisoner of the United States Army." The illusion of the master race shattered. The SS commander was no longer a proud elite. He was a terrified man, shrinking away from a true warrior. Patton turned his head to the young American private in the doorway. "Son," Patton said firmly. "Yes, General." "Pick that food up." The private walked over, knelt down, and scooped the dented tin and dusty biscuits off the floor. He placed them back on the metal tray and set it on the table. Patton turned back to the shaking SS commander. "Sit down." The German sat immediately. He stared at the dirty food. "That is your dinner," Patton said. "And if you don't eat every single bite, I will personally ensure you do not receive another crumb of food until this war is over. Do we understand each other?" The SS officer couldn't make eye contact. He looked at the tray. "Yes." "General," he whispered. Patton stared at him for one final second. He adjusted his helmet, turned on his heel, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked back. "Welcome to American captivity." Patton stepped out. The heavy door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The SS commander was left alone in the dark, quietly eating dirt off an American tray. This was the harsh reality fanatical German troops faced when their delusions met the unstoppable force of the Allied armies. They expected to be treated like conquerors. Instead, they met men who had no patience for their arrogance. General Patton proved that you don't need a bullet to destroy an enemy. Sometimes you just need to show them the truth. In the end, the myth of the master race collapsed not with a bang, but with the sound of a spoon scraping against a dirty metal tray. What do you think of Patton's response? Did the officer get what he deserved? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe for more untold history. Respect the fallen. Remember the past. We'll see you in the next video.